Hello and welcome to a short review of the Hornby Railway's Lord Westwood. So for a quick bit of history on Lord Westwood, this is not a real hall class. Hornby sort of just made it up to celebrate 25 years of Rovex Plastic, which is the people that were doing their moulds basically since they were still Triang, and Hornby W was a separate company. And Lord Westwood was the guy in charge of that. So they decided to name a model after him and produced it in this fictitious red livery. Unfortunately, my model does not have a box, but I'm not really too bothered about that. It is what it is. It would have just come in the early Hornby Railways box that weren't terribly different from the old Triang ones. I believe it would have come in sort of the yellow vac form tray with a cardboard outer sleeve. Upon first impressions, the model looks absolutely stunning. It is a very sort of cheerful looking model in that bright red with the white accents, and I really, really like this engine's livery. The number board on the smokebox door is not painted. There is no sort of transfer of a number on there, and if I had to guess why, it's because it's only long enough for a 4-digit number, whereas Lord Westwood, of course, has a 5-digit number. Lord Westwood has a copper-capped chimney, as is sort of standard practice with all Great Western engines. The nameplate across his splasher is not separately fitted as it would be in real life, and you can see it actually just goes all the way back into the boiler barrel and firebox, which is a bit of a shame. But this model is over 50 years old, so I can forgive that. There is no background, it's just text, which I wouldn't have gone for personally. I would have put a black background on there. The safety valve bonnet is actually painted silver as opposed to the normal colour it's picked out in, which is sort of a bronze or brass colour. So this sort of differentiates it from most Great Western engines, if it didn't already differentiate itself enough by being, you know, bright red. The whistles are separately fitted pieces of metal. One thing that does strike me as a bit odd about this model is sort of how boring the cab sides look. It feels like there should be some more of that lovely white lining there, as well as a number board. But again, I've already mentioned as to why Lord Westwood, at least the reason I don't think he has the traditional Great Western style number boards, because of his 5-digit road number. There is some rather nice cab detail on this model, but none of it's painted, though I suppose you could paint it if you wanted to. But there is also a fairly good separately fitted handrail as well. There's his tender, just been removed from the loco, and it, again, in that red and white livery, it is just absolutely fantastic looking. And you can see the 25555 on the side, which I read somewhere is Rovex's, or at least it was Rovex's telephone number for the Rovex Plastics, who did all Hornby's mouldings. As you might have heard in the introduction, this model has absolutely phenomenal sound features. If you've seen James May's Top Toys, then you might just be familiar with the realistic chuffing sound. This is accomplished by a piece of metal that has some sandpaper glued to it. There is sort of a lump on the axle that strikes it as it turns, which creates the chuff chuff sound. Another thing to note is that it still says Triang on the bottom. 1973 to 74 was sort of, I guess, a transitional period when they moved away from Triang Hornby and just became Hornby. I do not think this model was ever sold under the Triang Hornby name, just Hornby. But they hadn't altered all of their moulds yet to just say Hornby. So in fact the logo still says Triang Hornby underneath it as well. But this would have come in a Hornby Railways box. Here it is with the model it is derived from, the Albert Hall. So it was one of the first models that Hornby and Triang made after they merged in 1966. And it was originally available in a BR livery. Mine is in a Great Western livery from the early 70s. And Hornby kept producing it up until the 80s, when the tooling, I believe, was modified to turn it into a very poor rendition of a Saint, which I don't think they made for a very long time. Lord Westwood dates back to 1973-74, so it was a very early product of just Hornby Railways when they stopped being Triang Hornby. I paid just £37 for Lord Westwood. There's a couple of them on eBay right now for not much more, and I am very happy with what I paid. This is not a terribly realistic model. I think that's fairly obvious. But it is a lot of fun. It's very charming and it's in a beautiful livery, and I can't recommend that enough. The X04 motor is pretty good, pretty easy to service, so it shouldn't give too many problems. And I really highly recommend a lot of the old Triang products. Most of them are fairly cheap. I know I just called it a Triang product, despite me emphasising the fact that it is a Hornby product originally, but it shares basically all of its, well, it shares everything with the old Triang horns. But the early Hornby Railway stuff and any of the old Triang stuff, I really highly recommend. It's bulletproof, it'll last forever, and if you're just learning about models, it's pretty easy to service, and there's not a lot to break on it, so they're great models even for beginners. So this comes with a big thumbs up from me. It is probably my favourite model we have looked at yet this year. Now time for some running.